Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to all my new subscribers. I'm wearing my God a Minute shirt for those who haven't ever seen it. This is a YouTube channel that I follow. He's in Canada. Great channel if you want to check him out. So I wanted to do a video on the connection between God and the TV show Forensic Files. So this might sound weird, but once you start seeing the connection, it is so crazy. So I noticed this several years ago and it's been on my mind, just the amazing connection that there is. I haven't thought about doing a video forever since I just started last year with regular videos. But so if you aren't familiar, sorry, the neighbor's dog is barking. I hope I talk over it. But the TV show Forensic Files has been on for quite a few years, and they're just little half-hour shows, and they might even do 2 different stories in each show. And so they will pick maybe a murder case or a burglary or something, maybe a kidnapping, and they will go through and, okay, they'll look at, maybe the main people who are suspects, and then, it gets down to, we can't figure out, maybe this person, they ended up having an alibi, or this person is kind of sketchy, but then some things don't match up, and then this other person, they're not sure, but they're probably innocent. But they end up going through like the forensic analysis on, as they do, especially nowadays in 2025 and previously, with DNA especially, and finding hairs or even skin cells, maybe a partial fingerprint, even like a partial shoe print or a tire print. They can analyze the soil. So it comes down to the forensics of it, which is just the microscopic, it could be one cell or one hair, and and they can trace it back to a person, and so that places the person at the crime scene. Or the victim, it can place them maybe either in the perpetrator's car, or in one case it was their trunk. They found one cat hair. This lady was kidnapped, and the guy who was one of the suspects, he really cleaned out his car. He had put her in the trunk, and she had a cat, and so he vacuumed it out and everything. But they found, because they went in and they have their own vacuum and they do everything, and they search fingerprints and all that, and they found one cat hair. And so it's like, why would her cat have a hair in his trunk? And she didn't know him, he didn't know her. It was just a random awful crime. But yeah, that place. So that gives a little backstory about what the show Forensic Files is about. And so I started watching it probably 7-8 years ago. And it was when we were moving back to America from Australia after my mom passed. And I moved in with family. And I was waiting for my husband to move back to America. He had to get his permanent residency and all that stuff. And that took several months. So I was staying with this family member, and they watched the show, and it's on every night. And like I said, they're just half-hour shows. So it'd maybe be on for 1 hour or maybe 2 hours, and it's pretty addictive. And I'm not like I've said in other videos that I've done on Brian Koberger as of lately, just because of all that happened with his sentencing a couple weeks ago and all of that, but it has a Christian slant to it. So I've mentioned in those videos that I'm not a huge true crime fan, just because it's so upsetting to me and just so disturbing. And, people are awful. They are so bad. And some of the stories, either I couldn't watch them or I'd have to turn the channel. But some, I did, and they aren't completely graphic in the show Forensic Files. So if you want to check it out, there might even be some of the episodes on YouTube, or you can just search. I'm sure they're streaming somewhere. But yeah, they're really good, really interesting. And what I noticed, like I was going to do this video about the connection between God and the show Forensic Files. So what I started noticing, like I said, 7-8 years ago, and I would watch quite a few of them. So, there wasn't much else to do. So I would be, hanging out with this family member, or just on my own, I would watch it because it was pretty fascinating. And then once you saw what was happening, it's like, oh my gosh, how is God going to work this one out? And so I have watched hundreds and hundreds, I would say, of these episodes, maybe even 1,000. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And because, like I said, for years, we watched them. And then when my husband moved over to America, he was really into it. And he's more into, he doesn't mind like the graphic, grisly crime stuff. But anyways, so what I started noticing was they would find, like I said, it might be one hair in a random place. It might be one swab of a dot on maybe a wall or the inside of a car, and they would swab it, and that ended up being blood, and they could trace that to the victim. And it's just one little dot, maybe the size of that or something. But, and they're getting, and maybe they had someone who, maybe they were a person of interest and they had their eyes on them, and then that person ends up taking off and moves to a different state and does all this stuff, which, they could, because they weren't arrested and they weren't being held in jail, but then they end up getting tracked down because they found some little piece of evidence. Or it could be a fiber from the carpet, or the fiber from a jacket or a shirt or whatever. And because all the fibers, when you look at them, of all our clothes and all the fabric and carpet and everything, when you look at it under a microscope, everything has a certain structure. Some are in a triangle shape, some are like a tube, some are flat and square. And so they would match this up, and I would just be thinking, gosh, God totally orchestrated that to have them find, this one speck or this hair or this fiber, or, they analyzed the dirt on the tires of a car that showed they were at the swampy area where the body was found, or whatever it was. And then everything falls into place, like, okay, yeah, that shows they were there. And so once I started just paying attention to just God working and the connection with God and Forensic Files, and they might even bring in an expert from, let's say, England or the UK or wherever, or Australia. like a forensics expert who would look at something differently and say, hey, let's test the paint. You know, maybe there was a paint chip on something, and maybe on the victim's skin or clothes or whatever, and then they analyze that and trace it back to the paint that's inside of whatever, the perpetrator's van or house or whatever. So it's amazing when you have that as, you know, the lens that you're looking through, like, okay, how is God going to work this out and bring justice to the victim and their family? You know, the family is obviously distraught and devastated by the horrible crime and everything that's happened and the loss of their loved one, and they want justice. And there should be justice for the victim also. And so, you know, God orchestrates that. And I did a whole video on vengeance is mine. And that's all about God saying, no, I will take care of things. You know, you don't worry about it. You don't get revenge. You don't, you know, plot against someone. I will take care of it. And he really does. So yeah, you'll have to check it out. If you're into even true crime a little bit, or just like analysis of forensics, or just amazing, like I said, they get down to like microscopic things that they're analyzing, and then they track down, you know, the perpetrator, and they get arrested and convicted and sent to prison and whatever it is. And yeah, that helps, you know, bring justice for the family and closure. And it can even be years later, decades later, and with the new analysis they have nowadays, as opposed to, you know, decades ago, it's really advanced now. So cold cases, they can open and analyze something. Like they just arrested a guy in England, I think, for a murder he committed, I think, decades ago. He's now like 75 or 80, something like that. And yeah, he unalived this woman, but they traced something to, and found him, and he was the one. So anyways, yes, so this has been on my mind, just watching God work like right in front of us. And like I said, there's a whole TV show that shows, and the people might not, you know, the forensic people and the scientists and all that, they might not realize, they might not be Christians, they might just, you know, they're just doing their job, but they might not see that God is working this and connecting all the dots and making it to where they find the perpetrator and they get arrested and there's justice. So if you're into any of that, I highly recommend that show. So yeah, God is amazing and he will take care of things. And yeah, like I said, check out my other video about vengeance is mine if you are interested. Okay, well, I hope everyone's doing well, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.